Yes, I'm ready.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Super. Well, it being 1 o'clock, I'll call to order the October 4th, 2021 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with Ordinance 20-A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. A quorum is present. Architectural Review Board members present electronically are Fred Missel, Frank Hancock, Chris Henningsen, and myself, Dave Vanderwerf. Opportunities for public access to this meeting are posted on the county's website at the county calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone, both as provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This online meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. For all speakers, when it's your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. And for everyone participating today, please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking and presenting. For applicants making presentations, note that the presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Carolyn will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. So moving to disclosures, do any members have anything to disclose today?
No.
No. No.
No.
Nor do I. Thank you, everyone. Let's see, Carolyn, are there any members of the public wishing to comment about projects not on the agenda today?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. We have no consent agenda items, so we'll move on to regular review. There's one regular review item today. Margaret Malashevsky from the Planning Division of Community Development will be presenting that item. So our first item is ARB 2021-92. Oh, let's see, is that the right number? Southside Tier 2 PWS.
Sorry, no, that's wrong. It's 106.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Yeah, 2021-106. And Margaret, we'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Try and share my screen and just note that Frank Stoner did arrive.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
You able to see my slide? Great. Okay. This is a proposal to establish a personal wireless service facility at 2415 Southside Drive. And that's at the northeast corner of the intersection of routes 29 and 708. And the yellow star in this slide marks the general location of the proposed facility. And we've identified some technical issues with the submittal. We addressed them in the staff report, and I'll summarize them for you. But just to let you know that this morning, the applicant did email a revised plan, didn't have enough time to review it in detail, but I'll also try to identify some of the changes that I did note in those plans. But first, let me give you just a quick refresher on the ARB's role in this type of review. So there are two issues that the ARB addresses in the review of personal wireless service facilities. One is related to the certificate of appropriateness for the ground equipment and base station. The entrance corridor guidelines indicate that visibility of equipment and chain link fence, among other things, must be eliminated as viewed from the entrance corridor street. So the ARB can impose conditions to ensure that lack of visibility. The second issue the ARB addresses relates to the siting of the facility and whether the proposed site minimizes visibility. For this item, the ARB is providing advice to the agent for the site review committee. Also, when special exceptions are requested, the ARB can provide advice to the agent on those items as well. This proposal includes an 87-foot tall pole, some ground equipment, a chain link fence, and antennas on mounting frames. The pole is to be located in the center of a 50-foot square fenced compound, which is centered in a 100-foot square lease area. The pole location is approximately 178 feet from the Route 29 right-of-way. This drawing shows that the reference tree is immediately adjacent to the pole, and a note indicates that all vegetation within the compound is to be removed. A reference tree must be retained for the facility to qualify for the Tier 2 category, so a different reference tree will have to be chosen. The drawing shows some individual trees in the larger lease area. but another sheet in the site plan set, sheet Z1, shows the lease area as completely cleared. The trees that are shown on this plan, Z1, appear to be symbols rather than specific trees in actual locations. Also note that most of the trees shown between the pole and the street are in the right of way. The yellow line here highlights the property lines along the street. Because the plans have some conflicting and incomplete information, we couldn't really confirm that visibility of the ground equipment and chain link fence would be eliminated. So we do not recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness time. We recommend that additional information be submitted for further analysis, and with information confirming on-site screening of the fence and equipment, we could recommend approval of a certificate of appropriateness. This proposal includes a request for a special exception, and that request is to allow the standoff, which is the distance from the pole to the antennas, to exceed the typical standards. The typical standard says, in no case shall the closest point of the back of the antenna be more than 12 inches from the facility, and in no case shall the farthest point of the back of the antenna be more than 18 inches from the facility. So these diagrams illustrate that standard. The proposed standoff with this application is 63 inches between pole and antenna. The drawings don't show where that measurement is taken. That information is needed to fully understand the proposal. Now, a balloon test was conducted on September 16th of this year. And the balloon that was flown measured approximately 12.5 feet by 9 feet to represent the 63-inch standoff. Due to the density of the wooded area and the size of the balloon was not flown from the proposed monopole location, which is highlighted in yellow on this slide. Instead, it was flown in the clearing between the wooded area of the site and the trees along the street frontage, as seen in the photos on the right-hand side of this slide. That location is approximately 80 feet north of the Route 29 right-of-way and 150 feet southeast of the proposed monopole location, and it's represented generally by the red triangle on this plan. The pink or purple highlight in this plan shows the segment of the entrance corridor along which the balloon was visible. And that's generally between routes 708 and 710, and it's a distance of approximately 1 mile. The balloon was consistently visible along the segment between the red lines, and that's approximately 1/3 of a mile. Outside of the red lines, the balloon was intermittently visible. This photo shows the balloon from a location a short distance east of the subject parcel. It's from the southbound lanes of 29. And this photo shows the balloon is viewed from the northbound lanes across from the subject parcel. Now, I noted earlier the balloon was not flown from the exact proposed monopole location. So in this view, we would expect the monopole to be a little to the left of the balloon and the antenna array to be at least as big as the balloon, with the degree of visibility much the same as the balloon. Staff's recommendation is that this location does not sufficiently minimize visibility of the facility with the proposed antenna standoff. The standoff will result in an intrusive and incompatible appearance. However, flush-mounted antennas could be appropriate in the proposed location. And we've recommended a change to flush-mounted antennas and some additional information to confirm appropriate levels of visibility for that type of mounting. So this is a portion of the revised plan that was received this morning, and it shows a new reference tree. That's the green highlight. And it also shows that there is more equipment than was shown on the original submitted plan, and that's the purple highlights. This revised plan shows some trees to remain within the lease area. Most of the trees still seem to be symbols indicating wooded area rather than actual trees in actual locations. 2 trees that were previously shown at the southeast corner of the lease area have been removed. So the tree line along the street is being relied upon for screening of the fence and equipment. The photo on the left side of this slide was taken from on-site looking out to the street. If you can see a little, you can just barely see the road beyond those trees. So that's the area where the tree line, the existing tree line is thinner. But if you look at the plan, and, it looks like there's just a row of trees, and that's not exactly the existing condition. This part of the revised plan does give some tree information, but it's really not the level of detail that we would typically want to see. This is just an example from a previous plan from a completely different proposal, but it gives the individual tree locations, and they're keyed to an inventory that shows the type of tree and the size of tree, caliper and height and that sort of thing. This is a detail from revised sheet Z6. You can see it does now include dimensions, but the dimension that's needed is from the face of the pole to the furthest point on the back of the antenna. That's not given here. It's represented generally by the red line that I've drawn in there. This wasn't to scale, but just guessing based on the measurements that are given, it looks like the standoff as we would normally typically define it would probably be more like 70 or 80 inches, not really 63. And just this is a photo of the existing tower out at Pantops. You can see at the top there, maybe not exactly the same type of mounting, but I think that distance from pole to antenna is probably 6 or 7 feet. And that's probably, I'm guessing it's probably similar to what's actually being proposed. So to summarize our recommendations, we did not recommend approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the ground equipment or base station at this time. We did identify additional information to be submitted for further consideration. The second item in that recommendation was about the ground equipment, and that may be something we can eliminate at this time, since we've seen that revised plan. That was relatively straightforward. Also, we found that the proposed location does not minimize visibility of the monopole with the proposed standoff, and we do not recommend approval of the special exception due to its intrusive and incompatible appearance. However, we believe that flush-mounted antennas in the proposed location might be appropriate. So we've recommended flush mounting and the submittal of additional information to confirm an appropriate level of visibility with that type of attachment. Be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. Stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Let's see, Frank Hancock, any questions?
Sure. Thank you, Margaret. That was a lot of information. Very well presented. I maybe didn't hear at the end. Did you say that the materials provided today, you thought maybe were sufficient in showing the ground level screening?
There's the second point under my first recommendation regarding the ground equipment base station just said confirm that there's no ground equipment proposed beyond what's shown, and they've shown that now. So it's just about being clear about the extent of ground equipment being shown. So I think we're clear on that now.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question, that image that they provided looking out to 29,
That was
excuse me?
Sorry, that was my photo.
Oh, okay. Is that vegetation in the right of way or is that on the property?
That's a really good question. I did not mark on any plan exactly where I was standing when I took the photo, but because it's looks like it's really not deep. It's an area, a thinner area. I think that's probably the area on site that's represented in that plan where there is just that single row of trees, and that area shows those trees on the property, not in the right of way.
Okay, and maybe one more question. What was the reason for flying the balloon test in a different location?
Just given the density of the wooded area and the size of that balloon, there was no way to get in there and get it up through the trees.
Okay. Do we have any information like topo or anything where they flew that from and what that ground elevation was?
That's a really good question. Look through the plans and double check on that.
Okay, I'll stop. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Frank. Good questions. Frank Stoner.
The only question I have, Margaret, that maybe you can answer is whether this type of monopole with the offsets as proposed has been approved in any other rural location in the county.
We much more typically get the flush mounted antennas. I would, in my memory, the only ones like this that we've approved are when there's already some other facility there that's already like the one at Pantos. It's already, has visibility issues and appearance issues.
Yeah, I can't, it seems like maybe there's one off 64, just west of 29 on the way to Ivy, but I can't remember whether it's got this kind of offset or not. Anyway.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We can double check all that for you.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Frank. Fred.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Margaret. That's really helpful information. I just have two questions. One is kind of to Frank's point. I didn't see it in your staff report. Do we have the ability to request a balloon be flown from the actual location, or are we kind of conceding that we will sort of interpolate and assume what it might look like? Just never remember approving something that didn't have the balloon in the actual location.
Yeah, sometimes the balloons have not been the actual location, but they've been close by when there was a gap in the trees that it could be flown from.
I see.
It really seemed like in this location it would be hard to get any balloon of any size up, and that's part of the reason why it'd be important to have photo simulations that.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Got it.
There was a sheet in the set that had some topography on it that's not really detailed and doesn't show the location where the balloon was flown, so it's probably not may not be sufficient for Frank, for what you were looking for.
Be interesting to know if the height of the balloon was actually the height from the location. So, if the location was down further, they could lower the balloon so that it was an accurate height difference.
It's my understanding that the top elevation was, or the topography was accounted for.
Okay. Good to know. And then I know there was attached correspondence, and I'm assuming that our takeaway on that attached correspondence, which talked about redundancy and proximity to the other pole, that's really kind of, it's good to know, but it's not really important to us, right? Unless I'm missing something.
It's not part of your review. That's correct.
Got it. Great. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Fred. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the current proposal does not include any kind of screening at ground level for the equipment or the fence itself. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. That was my only question. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. And Margaret, I guess picking up on Fred's question about the balloon, you noted that the balloon that was flown was very large because of the proposed standoff. If they were to propose no standoff, do you think a smaller diameter balloon could be flown from closer to the actual location?
I'm really not sure. It's pretty dense, but it may be possible. I could also just point out that we have another staff member here, Bill Fritz, who is, he's got his hand raised. I think that he might have some maybe.
Oh, good.
comments to offer on some of the questions that have been asked?
Hi there. I'd be happy to answer. Hi there. I'd be happy to answer your questions on the stand. I can answer on the standoff question. I think Frank Stoner had. And the only standoff, the large standoff antennas I can think of have been in the urban areas, and in the few cases in the rural areas where they've been approved on existing power lines, where they're modifying one of the high voltage power lines. And there were two cases. One was in the rural areas, one was borderline at Western Albemarle High School and Albemarle High School, where large diameter or large standoffs were done on new antennas. Sort of urban areas, right at the edge of development areas or rural and development area boundary. The balloon, there's really no way to get any size balloon flown at the actual site. The tree canopy is just too severe. If you got a balloon through the tree canopy, you would never be able to retrieve it. And I don't know that you'd be able to get it through the tree canopy. So, and the balloon height was flown at above sea level. So they accounted for the terrain difference. I think that answers all the questions you had.
I believe so. Thank you, Bill. With that, I'd like to invite the applicants to make their presentation.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hadisha. I also have on the line with me, but he's not on as a panelist right now, Todd Marion Petrie. He is from the engineer's office. Their office is in charge of project management, engineering, as well as construction. So he would be helpful in this conversation as well if we could add him as a panelist to also chime in here. But I'll go through and just be able to just start addressing some of the concerns that you all have. Specifically with visibility, starting with the visibility. So we have already started kind of revising the drawings and the proposed installation to kind of offset visibility concerns and things of that nature. So the revised plan that was submitted today, this morning, sorry about the delayed getting that to you guys, but that was submitted today. It has been pushed back already about 18 feet. We're pushing the tower back a little bit more within the tree canopy so that the trees can stay surrounding that area there and help offset what you see from the roads and the corridor there. As Mr. Fritz mentioned, flying the balloon at that exact location, it just was not possible, which is why we went a little further down, which is kind of in some already cleared area there. So there will be some trees remaining, and there will be some trees that have to be removed, of course, for the tower to be installed. The reason why it's unclear on the plans right now is because we're not sure exactly what trees those would be, but we are in the process of further investigating that to see if we can get a more clear answer. That's usually done closer to construction time, though, but we will work to try to get a more clear answer about what trees are staying and what trees are going. But we do think that pushing that tower back the 18 feet again would help to kind of help with the visibility concerns. We also think that that would help with the fencing area there, which was also a concern, the equipment compound area. We think that there's going to be sufficient enough trees that are staying to be able to shield the equipment area. Right now, we're proposing the chain link fence. And we don't think that it will be an issue or a concern for what you can see from the corridor. But in the event that it is, and you guys like some more screening or something of the sort there are other options as like wood fences and things of that nature that can be placed there instead of the chain link fence. But I think, again, that there's going to be sufficient trees to kind of cover that area. To address the flush mounting of the antennas, so generally, as you know, that the antennas can be flush mounted to kind of go closer to the pole. In this situation here, we were proposing the antennas to be non-flush mounted and away from the pole for coverage purposes, to be able to get the maximum coverage in the area as possible. Since the tower is not really that high, it's about 87 feet, it's better for coverage purposes for the antennas to stick out from the pole a little further as opposed to come in closer. When they come in closer, typically they try to do two sectors, which means like the first sector would be at the top of the pole, or a little short of the top, a little short of the top of the pole, and then the next sector would come down maybe 10 feet or so from there. But that would significantly limit, again, the coverage that you get in the area because the antennas are not all at the same height, number one. And then two, the second sector of antennas would be much lower than that first. So proposing the non-flush mounted antennas, again, is just for coverage purposes and to maximize and optimize how much coverage we get in that area. But again, in the alternative, we already have gone back to our RF engineers to see if there are any options for flush mounting the antennas, what that would look like as far as coverage, and what that would look like, of course, with the visibility of the antennas. Lastly, we are working also on getting the photo sims. We were hoping to have them done by today. But again, we were kind of making the revisions to the drawings based on the recommendations that you guys had so far. So because we were working to kind of revise the drawings, we had to kind of push off the photo sims so that the photo sims accurately depict what we're now proposing. So that kind of messed up the timeline and everything there. But we do still intend to get you guys some photo sims so that you'll have a much better idea of what the tower would look like there. So, other than that, I'm available for any questions or concerns or anything else that you have that you'd like to further discuss. And again, Todd, who is a part of the project management, construction, and engineering team, is also here that could maybe answer some more additional questions for you guys with regard to antenna installation tower concerns.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll invite members to ask any questions they may have, starting with Fred.
Did you say Fred?
Yes, please, Fred. Thank you.
I always hate to be the first one. I have fewer questions. I guess I do have one question. I have more statements than questions, but first of all, thank you, Ms. Gordon, for your presentation. I really appreciate that. There were a lot of really good clarifications there. I guess the question I have is, in a few sentences, you mentioned, I think that the coverage will be sufficient, the tree coverage, because you moved the facility back 18 feet. Did you mention that you would be doing a tree survey though, or are you just sort of kind of assuming that because you're moving it back 18 feet, we will now have sufficient coverage?
It's a bit of both. So yes, we think that moving it back does help, but we are also in the process of getting the exact answers for you guys about what trees are staying versus what trees would be going. Like I said, it's a little difficult because that's usually done at our construction point. Once they know how the tower or where the tower needs to go, and for safety concerns, making sure it's stabilized and things of that nature. But I think that there is some information that we can get now as far as a tree survey that would be helpful for you guys. So that all the information we can get at this juncture, we are working to get.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's all I had, Dale. Dave.
If this is Todd. And I want to chime in as far as the tree clearing, and our goal is to, in fact, keep as many trees as possible. Our concern with the trees is when it comes to stacking the tower, that the crane has a safety radius of when it lifts it up off the ground and rotates around to actually stack it, that trees are not going to be a issue from a safety concern, because that's our biggest factor when we set these towers. So any trees that can remain will absolutely remain.
Thank you. Chris, do you have any questions?
I don't really have any questions. It sounds like you're in the process of assembling some more information that's going to be really helpful to see. So at this point, I don't have any further questions that haven't already been addressed.
Thank you, Chris. Frank Stoner.
Thanks, Ms. Gordon. Appreciate your clarification. I don't have any real questions other than I'm just brainstorming about how we might be able to get a balloon or something to the location that you actually envision the pole being at. And I'm wondering if it might be possible to take a drone and come from the cleared area over to whatever the designated location is. Obviously won't be the size, but would at least allow us to determine whether in fact the drone's visible from Route 29. Have you guys ever done that in the past? And is that something you'd be open to considering?
Yes, flying a drone is an option.
Sorry, go ahead again, Ty. You had a little feedback.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
I think he's trying to talk here. He may be on two devices. He is actually at a conference, so he may be having some tech issues. Todd, are you still there?
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
I think he was saying that flying a drone was an option. I think that's what I heard him say. Todd?
Sorry about that. I'm here.
You had a little bit of feedback when you were answering the question about the drone.
Yes, we can fly the drone.
Great. Well, thank you. That's great. Thank you for the suggestion, Frank. Did you have other questions?
I do not.
Frank Hancock.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Ms. Gordon. That answered a lot of questions. I did just have two quick questions. Are there trees to remain inside the leased area? And all the trees that are being cleared inside the fenced area, the compound?
That's a good question. I think that's a better question for Todd because of that switch and that change there. I believe the way you're moving it, but correct me if I'm wrong here, Todd, that we were trying to leave the trees outside of the compound area now so that they would be the buffer.
The game plan now is to have both the trees outside of the 50 by 50 will remain. And then whatever trees we can save within the 50 by 50 will remain.
Okay. And then one other quick question. Will there be clearing required for the access road? Or is there an access road?
There will be minimal trees cleared for that. Sorry about that. There'll be minimal trees cleared.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I don't have any further questions. Thank you again to Ms. Gordon for the presentation. All right, why don't we go into, let's see, and actually first let me ask if, Carolyn, are there any members of the public wishing to comment?
Yes. Yes, at this time I have Tracy Thermack that would like to speak. Tracy, please state your name, address, if you're affiliated with a group or organization. You'll have 3 minutes to talk and your time starts when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Tracy Themack. My address is 117 Orinoco Street in Alexandria, Virginia. And my firm, Donahue & Stearns, represents SBA We submitted the correspondence letter, and I understand we're keeping this to the design review criteria. But we did mention in that letter, SBA's tower currently houses AT&T on the site, which is what this site is designed for. And I did hear the applicant present and say that, the reason that they have not presented a flush mounted design that is so critical in Albemarle County, we've done other towers here, was for coverage issues. And so I think it begs the question, well, we've done a coverage study and the exact coverage that they're proposing to satisfy is satisfied by the current SBA tower with AT&T antennas installed, and those antennas are flush mounted. So given that the coverage will be the same, in fact, the current location where AT&T is actually a net 6 feet higher. So if anything, the coverage is better. I don't know that the excuse for non-flush mounted antennas holds water, because we have them and we did abide by the design criteria. And it took some extra designing, sure, but in order to minimize the visual impacts from the entrance corridor there on the other side of 29, we were able to accomplish it. And we didn't get any degradation in coverage. In fact, the coverage, again, that they're proposing is met and exceeded by the one that is currently in place. And it may not be exceeded, it may be duplicated, but and that might be perhaps because of the higher topo where the current tower is. But I guess we would propose that they either try harder to get a flush mounted design, or they admit that it can be done because we've done it for this exact carrier. I think that's the biggest point we wanted to make, and I appreciate the board's consideration of our letter and our time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. Carolyn, are there any other members of the public wishing to comment?
No, there are not.
Thank you. Well, we'll enter discussion. Frank Stoner, would you kick it off?
Thanks, Nate. I mean, it seems like we need more information, which sounds like the applicant's willing to provide us. I'm particularly intrigued after just hearing those comments regarding the other tower that's there, just understanding why this tower is even necessary if the existing tower provides as good, if not better, coverage. Maybe that's not relevant to what we're doing, but it certainly be curious to know why this project's even happening. Other than that, I don't really have much in the way of other thoughts or questions. It seems like we need more information.
If I could jump back in, I would be happy to address Frank's comment about the tower and the need for the tower. Again, I'm not sure if that's completely all within your guys' review, but if it would help at all to kind of provide that clarification, I would be happy to. Not to, belabor your reviews or anything. But I think what Mrs. Steemack did not mention is that SBA does sharply increase the rent, assess other one-time cost, and poses a lot of unacceptable logistical issues when it comes to AT&T replacing and installing or modifying their new equipment. So essentially, this has become an issue of AT&T essentially kind of being priced out of the market because the cost at their current facility is way too high. So if they're not able to continue to improve coverage and to develop the site as they need to, there will be an issue of coverage and coverage concerns moving forward and in the near future. So again, there is coverage there, but you're going to still need to have the coverage there down the line. So the move now is something that AT&T feels is absolutely necessary in order to be able to continue and keep the coverage that they have there, as well as to kind of improve coverage. Again, with kind of having the antennas offset from the tower now, and again, improves coverage versus flush mounting. But we're not saying at this time that flush mounting is not an option. It's something that we're kind of still vetting out and looking further into. And we're willing to do any and everything that we can to make sure that the facility is something agreeable by all parties.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. I agree with your point that our review is not for coverage, signal coverage. It's for the visual and aesthetic impacts. And I think there's a lot for us to consider in that regard today. I guess, Frank, thank you for starting the discussion off. Fred.
Sure, thanks. Frank, were you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Thanks. Just a couple of things, I guess. Number one, just a general comment, and having been part of this conversation regarding towers for years and seeing the results of it in Albemarle County, I think I would just want to recommend that the applicants study the past work that's been done in the county and the success of that past work in terms of limiting or reducing drastically the visibility of these types of infrastructure. It makes a huge difference. So I just wanted to put that out there. The second thing is there have been numerous applicants, and I'm not just saying SBA, although they did raise the issue. There are numerous applicants who have had to accommodate flush mounted antennas who probably would have preferred to have offset antennas because it would simplify and increase their ability to distribute the signal. So I would just want to make sure that we as a board are really careful about the precedent that's been set in the past. And I don't want to call it a hardship, but the design parameters, I guess, within which other applicants have had to work in order to keep the aesthetic and visibility where the intent of the guidelines have them. I think there were a couple of statements. One was, I think most of them came from, I think, I'm going to not say your last name right, so I'll call you Mr. Todd. But they were things like, first with safety concerns, and we'll take out as few trees as possible, but we need to be, careful with the tower and the crane swing. Again, that's something that other applicants have had to manage and deal with. Accurately showing the trees to remain, as staff has put in their requirements, is a must. It's something that I think we have to ensure is done. There were other statements like whatever trees we can save, we'll save, and minimal trees will be cleared. None of that stuff in my book is at all objective. So I think we need to make sure we document specifically which trees are to remain and which are to be taken out. Again, there's lots of precedent here for that. And I'm sure staff would be helpful to give you clear guidance if you need more detail than what's already in the staff reports. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much, Fred. Frank Hancock.
Thanks, Dave. I agree with what Frank and Fred have put forth, and really just, I'm in agreement with staff's recommendations. I don't know that I have anything else to add. Look forward to seeing a more complete picture of what this will look like from the corridor, with the requested materials. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Chris?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I'm completely in agreement with what everyone else has said. I don't think there's enough information at this point to make a determination. And I think particularly what Fred said about kind of meeting the precedent that's already been established is going to be really important. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. I think I agree with all my colleagues, and really just for emphasis would add to what Fred said. I think the county's standards have resulted in really, for the most part, minimizing the visibility of these sorts of facilities. And as Fred and others have pointed out, other applicants have managed to find technical solutions to work within them. And so would encourage, as Fred did, the applicant to look at the precedents in the county and look for a way to comply with the guidelines. Why don't we take a look now at the staff recommendations, Margaret?
Are you able to see the Word document? Okay, so there were 3 parts to the recommendations. The first one was regarding the certificate of appropriateness for the ground equipment and base station. Our suggested motion for you was to move to require additional information be submitted for additional consideration of the certificate. And that means not approving a certificate of appropriateness today. The first point there was to provide a tree plan that provides all that additional information. The second point was to confirm that there was no additional ground equipment, or to make sure it's shown on the plan if there was additional. I'm going to stop at the first one before we move on.
Margaret, does anyone see any need to add or amend to that? And if not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Carolyn, call-
Yes, Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
and Mr. Missile.
Aye.
Okay, the second action is regarding the visibility of the facility. Our recommendation is for a motion to forward this recommendation to the agent. And it's that the ARB finds that the proposed location will not sufficiently minimize the visibility of the monopole. And then there's a list of 5 items of additional information to be submitted for further consideration.
Margaret. Does anybody have any comment on the proposed motion? And if not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Carolyn, would you call the vote?
Yes, Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Missile.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and the third action regarding the special exception, our recommendation is for a motion to forward a recommendation to the agent. That being that the ARB does not recommend approval of the special exception due to the intrusive and incompatible appearance of the proposed standoff. And again, a recommendation for additional information to be submitted for further consideration. And those items are the same as in the previous action.
Thank you, Margaret. Are there any comments? Or is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Missile,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so we'll move on. Our next item, which is a work session for Discount Tire ARB 2021-67. So Chris,
Dave, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, I will need to leave the meeting at 2:15 today. Sorry, I didn't let you know or
that's all right. Thank you, Frank.
slip my mind.
Rose for the beginning.
Good afternoon, board members. I don't have a presentation prepared, but I'm available to answer any questions you all may have.
Great. Well, do any members have questions for staff? I guess Chris and Maria?
Was that me, Dave?
Apologies for the background noise here. Actually, Chris, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. I guess there was a comment regarding the screening along the property line about the ornamental trees versus shade trees. Did they submit a revised landscape plan or anything that shows exactly what's proposed, or is the that rendering the only kind of indication we have of what that landscaping is going to be?
The applicant did submit documents that include a revised landscape plan, but staff guidance, because work sessions are usually limited to single specific issue, so we can narrow down or get guidance to the applicant to narrow down the focus to one particular item.
Okay.
So, but I do have it readily available to pull up. Species stated was ornamentals. It's like a either crepe myrtle or service berry.
Well, great, and perhaps when the applicant is making their presentation, I think that site plan or that landscape plan would be of interest. Frank Hancock, do you have any questions?
Just maybe a refresher of where we are. So did we review initial site plan in July and preliminary architecture?
Correct, yes. And as kind of noted in the memo, the board recommended approval of the initial and preliminary. Particular member mentioned that it might be a good item to bring back to the board for a work session prior to the final site plan review, just because I guess the recommendation is made on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let's see, Fred.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank Stoner.
No questions for me either, Dave. Thanks.
None from me either. Thank you, Frank. Let's see, is there a representative from the applicant? Then could I invite them to make their presentation, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Ryan Yager from Bowler here. I just wanted to get back together this afternoon, and I appreciate everyone's time. As Chris mentioned, we're trying to narrow our focus down to the northern elevation the best we could, but understand the site as a whole works in unison here. So as a quick overview, I'll actually share my screen briefly. And just let me know when you can see this.
We can see it now.
Okay. So we did do numerous items. We took the advice of the board and revised our site plan to potentially go back in for another full re-review. But prior to that, we wanted to focus on the northern elevation, as you can see here. So part of the screening of the northern elevation, we actually shifted the entire site back 15 feet to provide additional landscaping along the frontage. We did actually look at the material type change as well along the facade of the building, and added some screening planters right up along the building as well, to add some greenery along the building to break up that facade. And then additionally, we looked at minor tweaks to the retaining walls. We mentioned kind of in the original ARB meeting there for the initial site plan, looking at the heights of retaining walls, placement of the retaining walls, and providing that 2D horizontal dimension from the property line to help screen it a little bit more. Chris did mention about the landscaping plan being submitted in. We did actually go ahead and revise the landscaping plan. I was trying to pull that up on the fly here, but we do show the ornamental trees along this property line here with the retaining wall for additional screening. We weren't able to provide additional horizontal area, I will say, for substantial planting along the building, other than the actual, just the screening and the trellis planting there along the building. But we were able to provide the planting along the property line, as well as provide the planting along the buffer along the front as well. All in unison to try to enhance that northern elevation there. So purpose of today was to get initial feedback. We're obviously trying to go back in for a formal setting for a vote and things like that. I wanted to get feedback on the northern elevation here. I do want to say as well, I do have an architectural team on board for any specifics that you might have questions on for the materials or anything like that. But looking forward to what everyone has to say.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll invite members to ask any questions they may have. I guess, Fred, you want to start it off?
Sure thing. Thank you. Couldn't find my mute button. So I have just one quick question that comes to mind. I know it's a work session, so I probably have some others, but along that north side from the site plan, it didn't look like there were planting beds to establish any growth related to those planters, trellises along the side. Were you planning to plant green on those trellises or just have them be an architectural feature?
Kwok, would you mind chiming in there? Is that something that you feel comfortable with speaking on?
Yeah, so yes, we do plan on making sure that those planters on the north side will be vegetated with native plants in the area. So yes, they're not just going to be metal contraptions attached to the building, but hopefully we'll have get some foliage up against that wall.
And then Fred,
Okay.
to your point, we will have the areas carved out when the plans goes back in to show that planting bed there.
Okay, just to ensure you have enough width in there, right? I don't know how wide that sidewalk is, but you might have to pop that out a bit. The other thing is, and I was pulling up some pictures of Stonefield because really, I was, to be honest, never a huge fan of those planters on buildings because they didn't seem to be that effective all the time. And a lot of times the plant material would just fry and die and it wasn't that effective. So, but I've been amazed at how effective they have been in certain parts of Stonefield. And I think part of the reason they're effective there is because they're not just slapped on a blank wall. They're actually put on a wall with, some differences of color between the inset panel where they're set. And there's some regularity to that or some, I'm not sure really what the right word is, but it's more about the building and less about the planter. It's almost like there's a frame for the planter. And I'm wondering if there'd be a way without too much effort to create that kind of relief and thereby help break up some of the scale of that wall, that, and also accentuating the trellises. Just something to think about.
Yeah, we can certainly go back and regroup as a team to make sure that we have a cohesive package going in and take that advice.
Just a thought. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. I think that's a great suggestion. Frank Stone?
Ryan, just a quick question about the plantings along that north boundary and whether the rendering effectively shows is an accurate representation of what you believe those will be at when they're full grown. Are in fact they blooming species? Just how accurate is the rendering?
Clark, do you want to speak to this?
Well, no rendering can ever be 100% accurate. It's supposed to give you a sense of what it would be ideally. But generally, yeah, it's about 80%, 90% accurate. I believe that one of my colleagues that's in attendance, Chulin Lee, would be better able to talk about this particular rendering. But he's not a panelist right now, so he can't speak. So if you're able to add him as a panelist, he can better speak to the specific rendering.
The idea in general, Frank, is they would be maintained to provide the general perspective that you're seeing here today. Whether or not it's exact height or exact growth to be determined, but general perspective.
What are the larger shrubs? Sorry, I should look back at the site plan, but.
Along the property line here?
Yeah, along that property line.
Looks like compact Japanese hollies.
Okay, great. That was my only question. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Frank. I guess, sorry, we'll go, Chris, to your questions next, but it reminded me maybe of a question for Chris Taggart. In terms of these plantings along the property line, what category of plantings in the guidelines would they best fit into, and what would the guidelines normally encourage or in this location, if anything?
For the perimeter of the site, it'd be large shade trees. Get the planting size on center. Leave 40 feet on center.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And Chris Henningsen, any comments?
Yeah, I guess my only comment really is that the trellises seem a little bit small, in my opinion. I think just looking at this rendering that we're looking at right now, you can't really even see them beyond the landscaping at the edge of the site that's depicted. Because that landscaping is there, I'm not as concerned about this facade to start with, but you know, it seems like if you're trying to break up the appearance of blankness on that facade, it seems like the trellises should be a little bit bigger. And I keep thinking of the other side of the building that has those large bay doors. It might be effective if you kind of mirrored that in a way and maybe made the trellises kind of not matching exactly, but kind of similar in scale to the bay doors that are on the other side of the building. So that's my only comment.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Frank Hancock, any other comments or questions?
Yes, I appreciate the widening of the landscape bed along the frontage, the Route 29 frontage. I think given the large tree requirement along this property line, that, you know, that might be a different look. And you might actually get to see the trellis work a little bit more with a more upright canopy tree, which I think could be a good thing. I agree with Chris. To me, the scale seems a little off on the trellis element. And maybe a way to think about that is, I think this might have been what Fred was hinting at with the Stonefield example, is, you know, combining some architectural detailing with this planted element, maybe in some sort of rhythm along that facade. You know, just a suggestion, but yeah, I think it's headed in the right direction.
Great, thank you, Frank. Appreciate all my fellow board members' comments. I think everybody's suggested some great potential improvements. I think, Fred, appreciate you highlighting the subtlety of sort of an architectural opening and then layering the trellis into that. And I think, Chris, your point about scale is a good one, and maybe combining those two could really start to enliven this facade. And then I think, Frank, if these trees do become taller and you see that trellis more, I think you're onto something with the scale. So I don't know, Ryan or Kwok, any immediate thoughts or questions?
I'll let Kwok start first if you had anything there. Nothing immediate for me.
I don't really have much comments, just that we're definitely, these comments that you guys provided for us have been very helpful. And we can definitely talk with our client in regards to enlarging the plant trellises and somehow having them mirror the architectural details on the other side of the building. So we'll definitely take these comments into account and hopefully move this project forward.
And I would echo that. We definitely appreciate your time this afternoon.
Great, and likewise, thank you for the engagement. Let's see, Margaret, do we need to do anything further, or we'll just look forward to the next submission?
We will provide a summary of the comments in the minutes. Make sure the applicant gets a copy of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. Well, we'll move on to other business. We have one item, the approval of minutes for September 7th, 2021. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve those. I'll move. I haven't moved all. So, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, could you call the vote?
Yes. Mr. Stoner,
I have to abstain. I wasn't here for that meeting.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
and Mr. Missile.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. I think we may be able to let Frank go in time. So anything else? Yes, Fred.
I just have one thing. It's kind of just a side comment. You know, I thought that the wireless was really an interesting discussion, especially between the two carriers. And I know that, you know, from our standpoint, if there are two carriers that are side by side and there's an issue with one charging so much that you know, a provider wants to go somewhere else close by, you know, as long as we can't see the poles, it's not an issue for us. But I just wonder if this is going to at some point continue and we're going to start having a lot more poles in close proximity because people are, you know, trying to be more competitive.
I think
And that's going to potentially be
my understanding is the 5G technology works on a different wavelength and needs to be much more densely signalized. So yeah, I think it's a good point, Fred, that there may be more coming. So I appreciate everybody's work today to sort of uphold the strong precedents and traditions of minimizing visibility that have been set before us in the county.
Yeah.
One thing, not to give anybody any work or anything, but is there anything in the zoning ordinance that stipulates distance between poles?
There is not, and in fact, the FCC basically regulates these telecommunications. Very limited scope for the county to regulate anything.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. Let's see. Our next meeting is October 18th. Who's planning to be present?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. It's a full house. So with that, we will adjourn to the next meeting on
Mr. Chairman, just
yes.
Margaret, Chris, just so you know, I will not be available for the November 1st ARB meeting.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know, Fred.
I actually am not going to be available for that one either.
Let me check.
You guys plan so far out in advance. I have no idea if no, I'm just kidding.
You know, in fact, actually, I have a conflict on the 1st as well.
Is it election day? I think schools are out the first 2 days that week.
That's the source of my absence in this case.
So Margaret, with this much notice, what do you propose we?
Let me take a look at what's on the agenda and see if anything needs to be moved around, or I'll figure out what the options are, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Margaret, quick question before we get off. I'm sorry, I missed a couple meetings. Any status update on the 2 4250 corridor overlay guidelines.
You
I feel
haven't
like I
missed
should be
any.
doing some. Okay.
You haven't missed anything. We haven't really had it on the agenda recently, and we've had a few meetings have been canceled. I think everybody's supposed to be working on their streets or street segments. We have not been able to make any progress on the staff side with the one-pager format yet. Just having some staffing issues. Hopefully we can get that resolved soon and get that end of it back up and moving. But whenever anyone has made some progress on their segments, we can add it to the agenda and review your sections as they come in.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. Thanks for asking, Frank. All right. Well, with that, we will adjourn until October 18th, it being now 2:10 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. See y'all.